It is a glorious Thursday afternoon, just past 8 minutes past 3 here in New Zealand. That's Mangawika North Head. It's a volcanic cone and a perfect viewing platform for today's first race between Emirates Team New Zealand and Rossa Prada Pirelli. Unfair, you might say. Two helmsmen, Spittle and Bruni against Peter Burling. But boy, is it going to be special for you this afternoon. We're going to take you places you've never been before in this 36th America's Cup. We've got the best eyes on the water in back-to-back Olympic gold medalist Shirley Robertson. Stadium course, the feeling must be just tense.
Stephen, I cannot stop grinning. You know, for years the sport of sailing has been trying to deliver high speed, high drama action, and today, just look at this. It's sunny, it's windy, we've got the world's fastest sailboats, and tens of thousands of man-hours, technologies from all over the spectrum, avionics, Formula One, some of the smartest brains in engineering getting together to create the likes of which we've never seen before. And what a location. What a stadium to show the world what they're capable of. Boiling monohull, heeling upwind 3 times the wind speed. You know, the America's Cup always delights. There's always drama and always action around every corner. But it's already safe to say the AC36 already has the attention of sailing fans around the world. And I'm sure the next 3 months are going to change the game forever.
Emirates Team New Zealand on port entry. They were allowed in at 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go. They come in falling and they look great on these beautiful conditions on the Waitemata Harbour. You saw Rangitoto in the foreground as we see Rossa Prada Pirelli come into the pre-start. And now the tactics, now the mind games begin, gentlemen.
Yeah, the defender against the challenger of record right out of the blocks. Nathan, fortunately, we saw great timing there. We've had some struggles here the last couple days in some of the practice racing, but I think they've worked a bunch of the bugs out, and I think we see some real racing today, some real hard racing.
Yeah, that was a bang-on entry for both teams, and what I find really interesting is that the starting box isn't massive, so these guys aren't really sailing full speed like what we saw in Bermuda in the pre-starts there. New Zealand entered in, put their windward foil down, and were just coasting and gliding, and now we can see the chasers on. Emirates Team New Zealand here will be turning back to the line fairly soon, and it'll be up to Rossa to decide if they want to take the lead or if they're going to push.
It'll be fascinating to see how much these boats really do interact. One of the skippers talked about preserving the assets. Well, my guess is you get competitive sailors like this out here, and all of a sudden the boats just happen to come together a little bit quicker.
Already straight into it here, aren't we? It's very close overlap. It looks like to me Rossa in the controlling position here to Lewis. And just as I say that, Emirates Team New Zealand roll over the bow, but I think both boats are a little bit early for this start still.
Time and distance. Who's going to push who? The typical cat and mouse game.
No, he's matching us.
Just fantastic action right out of the blocks.
So here we go. 3 years and the right is over as a new entry is written in the America's Cup storybook. 75 foot foiling monohull in racing like you have never seen before. Let's go racing, everybody.
Out of the deck. My rake, my drop. Crossing.
Pretty even start. Prada probably a little bit behind, fearing that they were going to be in bad air, you know, in that wing wash all the way to the first boundary. So they just bail out right away, and pretty soon we're going to see split tacks back and forth. Is this going to be a match race or is this going to be a drag race?
All good.
I don't think Rossa could have held in that position for too much longer, so right choice there to tack out. And when they come back together, they'll have the starboard tack advantage. I've sailed a lot on this racetrack. It's quite shifty. Pressure's up and down, and so already seeing such a big split between the two boats. Be interesting to see who's got the first shift in this race.
Big split can't be that big though. It's only, let's see, 1.2 kilometers wide, this racetrack, and there's boundaries. The teams see the boundaries on screens in front of the helmsmen, so that they know when they're coming up on the boundaries.
Let's get onto the water. Early thoughts, Shirley, what you're seeing.
He just taxed now.
Stephen,
My trap.
it's
we're
really
slightly
puffy
ahead
on
at
this
the moment.
race course, just as Nathan was saying. It's a race course designed for street fighting, for looking for opportunities.
Yeah, nice.
To me, the Kiwis look like they've done very well on that left-hand side.
It's going to build high from this
Fascinating scenario on the Prada boat because they have two helmsmen. They don't switch sides. We're going to see all kinds of differing opinions as to how to sail these brand new design concepts. Jimmy Spithill stays on the starboard wheel. Francesco Bruni stays on the port wheel. Whereas you'll watch Peter Burling run around the front of the mast every time they tack. Totally different ways to skin this cat, so to speak. A pun from the past, maybe.
Always high and slow, eh? Always 5 point. Yeah, pressure coming.
That's the face of Jimmy
Let's see
Spithill
what
there.
angle it is.
You can hear the voice of mainsail trimmer Pietro Sibello talking to him about the modes that we're sailing.
Keep pressing a little bit for Phil.
Stephen, one of the clear things that we're seeing that we didn't see a lot of during the practice races is really smooth tacks right now. So pretty, I mean, you'd have to say flawless boat handling at this stage.
Well, if you remember, one of the aspects of the way these
Another good
boats
one on that
foil
starboard
is
side.
keeping your eye on the nose. You talk a lot about them being bowed down, but how level, and I think that Shirley Robinson explained to us that when you look at particularly Te Rehotai Emirates Team New Zealand, it's like it's on rails. There's not a heck of a lot of movement on that boat.
Aerodynamically, they're trying to fly these boats as low to the water as possible, almost touching the water, as Nathan continues to point out from his experience with the catamarans. You don't want to drag it through the water, you just want to try to cap it off, cap that hull off on the water.
Yeah, I think we're still good. Aiming to go one for
Having a
right.
little listen aboard here. There's a lot of chat coming off Emirates Team New Zealand. A lot more chat off this boat than what I remember hearing from them when they were racing the catamarans in Bermuda.
And you'd have to say, the Kiwis ain't slow right now. I mean, this is actually
Trying to pace up here all the time.
We're talking about the differences between boats, but the biggest difference right now, this guy's
Just past
ripping fast.
yellow.
Overlaid, yeah.
Standing by. Yeah, I got it. 3, 2, 1. Hurry.
Shirley, what have you seen upwind so far? It looks from this position here quite shifty. What's it like at the top of the course?
Yeah, good angle there.
There's a bit more wind at the top of the course, Nathan, but you're right, it's really puffy. It's a great looking course. I mean, also the top marks are right beside the spectator fleet, and I'm sure the Kiwis, when they come round, will get a massive cheer from their fans. As Stephen said, they look like they're on rails. It also looks like they have another gear just extending the whole time.
Go a little further.
Come down 3. About 8 seconds
Emirates
away.
Team New Zealand approaching the top gate for the first time, and they are flying.
One way.
And when you talk about crowd, well, in this part of the world we call it the home ground advantage. But look at the crowd in the viaduct, which is one of the areas that you can see this racing go. And Emirates Team New Zealand are around that top mark, and they are heading down to that windward leg for the completion of the first lap.
Just about 36 knots upwind amongst friends. Whoever thought that sailboats would be going at such a pace? I mean, when we watched you guys in Bermuda, Nathan, we thought those, but these guys are narrower. That dreaded VMG phrase. They're closer to the wind and going faster.
Luna Rossa now approaching the top gate, and they're going to take, as we see it, we could call that the left-hand mark as they attack and head into it towards the downward leg.
Trim. Accumulator.
Yeah, without doubt, these boats are very quick. You know, comparing them to the catamarans, there's only 2 appendages in the water. You've got the foil hanging out to leeward and 1 single rudder, whereas in Bermuda we had both rudders in the water. I've heard numbers from these teams of upwards of 10 knots faster upwind than what we were doing in Bermuda. Downwind, very similar boat speeds though.
Just 40 knots. I mean, how do you even talk about stuff like that? It's blowing 12 or 13 and they're going 40. My goodness.
Emirates Team New Zealand in a commanding position, and we haven't even completed the first leg of this lap. Remember, it is a 3-lap race. That's up and down the course 3 times. And And then the finish for this series will be at the bottom mark. Just for this series, the bottom marks will be considered the finish line. But what a magnificent sight it is from our helicopters. You see the stadium course ringed by, well, fanatical sailing fans here in Auckland.
There is no question, though, that this is a very lopsided sailboat race going on here right now. The Kiwis have been rumored for weeks to have come out of the blocks with this brand new boat. Remember, this is the second boat that each of these teams will have put in the water. They've been rumored by the rest of the teams, by the press, by the people following it closely, that they're quick, that the rest of the teams think they're quick and realize we got some catching up to do. But Nathan, I don't know if anybody saw them being this quick. This is a crushing going on right now.
Kenny, just look at that lead. It's like we haven't even done a lap yet, and these guys are already over 700 meters in front. It's a 3-lap race. It's just staggering. And, you know, I was watching the first upwind, and Shirley, maybe you can verify this, but it didn't look like Team New Zealand were doing anything special in terms of picking great shifts. It just looks like their boat's going very fast.
Well, Nathan, I would have said they were on the wrong side. Left wind on that left-hand side, but still, it just seemed to be extending all the time. It's so impressive. What a schooling.
If Emirates Team New Zealand were feeling any pressure, any sort of pressure after a practice loss to American Magic, they haven't shown any sign of that. They have come out of the gate in this opening race of the America's Cup World Series and are showing everybody that if you want to win this America's Cup, you're going to have to beat us as they approach the bottom mark for the first time.
Don't miss going through that gate, by the way. It looked like that graphic showed the beach pretty quick.
Emirates Team New Zealand rounding the bottom mark for the bottom gate for the first time. Take the left-hand mark. Good job around that, head up, and that's the completion of lap number 1 of 3.
Auto the job with pressure.
Nice maneuver there, boys.
Peter Burling.
Yeah, starting to face up there, going into good breeze. Copy attack in 30 seconds.
The windage on these boats, when you're going so fast, so fast, that the windage becomes as more important than the hydro drag that they have. Maybe not more important, but as important for sure. And how they're all tucking themselves down inside these cockpits, trying to keep their heads low.
Good leyline here. The fast one.
You can imagine Peter Burling looking quietly across. Not that he's that type of guy, and looking across and saying, "Arrivederci, boys."
Not yet. Remember, the Kiwis have, I don't think so. The Kiwis have 4 days here of race training. That's it.
Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli going quick as they enter the bottom gate for the first time and round on the left-hand mark as you see it on your screen. And look at the challenge ahead. 1 lap completed for Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli.
Yeah, we were saying, Nathan, these guys have 4 days of racing, and then essentially they're on their own. And you go back again. We're going to reference the crazy event that was in Bermuda, but the similarities end there because these guys are on their own. They're not going to be racing. They're not going to be part of a series. They're not going to be part of any sort of training against other boats. And you got to believe these challenges are going to be getting better by the day. And boy, you better hope so if you're a challenger right now, because this doesn't look pretty right out of the blocks.
Man, like these guys have spent 3 years designing, developing these boats, sailing on their own, and this is the first time they're getting a real chance to check in. As you said, Team New Zealand have 4 days to really get a good feel for how they are compared to these other boats, areas they need to improve on, and after that they're back on their own again. Clearly right now, Team New Zealand have the upper hand. They look to be much faster. The maneuvers are looking very slick. You see they're exiting attack there at 23 knots of boat speed. They'll easily be up over 30 knots very soon once again. Challengers will have a couple of months to keep working together, but
1 minute this way.
early impressions say they're going to need that time to catch up.
And working together may be slightly off key because they don't help each other at all. The only way they help each other is to go out and compete every day. They all talk about, every team talks about the need to improve every day. And we remember some of these development classes where you can gain knots from day to day, not tenths of a knot. Like back in the day when I was doing this stuff.
It's like 3-4 knots that you can gain with a few little tweaks of your control system or your aerodynamics, and they're going to need to find about 2 or 3 knots at this point.
There's no question about it.
Yeah, my drop.
Yeah, crossing. My trap.
In 20 feet. Yeah, barely take you though. Copy.
Emirates Team New Zealand with an 800-plus metre lead on Rossa Prada Cup as they head towards the top gate for the second time.
Just being ready here, boys, team.
Goodness gracious, it's a
3,
missile.
2, 1.
It just, the creativity going into even doing it. Everybody talks about the design tools and the software, but remember, people make these design tools and software. This is somebody's idea at some stage, you know? It's just an amazing boat.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of hours of design and then build hours as well to create, as Sir Ben Ainsley, who was the helmsman of Ineos Team UK, witnessed.
Totally, you know, and this rule's pretty open, you know. When we were in Bermuda last time out in the America's Cup, there was a lot of one designer components on the boat. This time out, there's only a couple of those things. You know, the one design component of the beast boat is that foil arm, that white foil arm that hangs out the side of the boat. Exactly. It's one of the only one design parts. The mast is a one design part, but the hull shape, as you can see, is different on all the boats.
It's worth explaining what one design is for those that don't understand the argument. Does it simply mean you cannot touch it, you cannot fiddle with it?
It means written in the rule of these boats, you have to build the boat to this compliance. So some of these parts, you buy them from a one design supplier, which means they're identical.
Emirates Team New Zealand about to head into the top gate for the second time.
That's nice there. Big pressure at the mark.
Heading towards the right-hand mark as you see it on your screen.
3, 2, 1.
And then they will head down on what we would call leg 4 to complete lap number 2. In control, Emirates Team New Zealand.
So Shirley, calling you in to tell us, you know, everybody modes their boats for different wind strengths. Maybe this is a moding thing. What's our wind strength out there right now? What do we have? What do you see on the water?
Kenny, I mean, it's pretty up and down here. It's a real kind of urban racetrack, I'd say, between 14 and 18, 19 knots. You know, really poppy. I'm in the catamaran that's bringing you the feed. We're in the filming catamaran and hanging on here. The speed is extraordinary. And just really trying to look at the Kiwi boat for something obvious, but it's like there's real finesse in every area. They fly the boat just the same distance off the water all the time. They're more aero perhaps than the other team. You know, everything just looks really slick and very, very polished already.
Stay here.
You stay there,
Yeah.
Rossa, very good path here.
It's one of the best shots you'll see on television, looking back at the bow of that magnificent dot. It is a beautiful boat as they complete the rounding of the top gate for the second time and look down the downwind and go. Bit to do, Jimmy Spittle.
Really interesting. The bottom time delta was 1 minute 14. The top mark time delta was 1 minute 15. So on that upwind, they didn't lose anything. So, you know, I guess it's puffy out there.
Okay, I have a conspiracy theory.
Go for it.
You ready?
Yeah.
They're backing off on Team New Zealand. They don't want to look too far ahead.
You reckon they've already begun the sandbags?
I don't know.
Take a look at the relative speeds of the boat. On the left-hand side, that's Emirates Team New Zealand doing around 42.5 knots. On the right-hand side, 44 knots by Rossa Prada Cup.
I'm sorry, I can't get over it. The difference between the two, you know, it's not like the Prada boat, Luna Rossa, is doing anything. Honestly, they look really smooth. They haven't had any crashes into the drink. They haven't splashed down at all. They look polished. They look fast. I mean, obviously, it's an amazing boat, but something is, you know, you got the fins, you got the wings. Here's a couple big differences. Well, we'll go back to that in a second. We'll take a look at that split screen on the wing feature again when we get a chance. But
speed is not very different, but what we're not really talking about yet is the angles. Maybe these boats go very similar speeds, but maybe New Zealand just have the ability to point higher upwind, so therefore they're doing less distance. And maybe they're pointing lower downwind and again doing less distance.
We'll see
it's
that
a balance of the two.
Yeah, we'll see that in the race recap. That'll be a telling sign if they just go way fewer distance, right? A lot fewer distance.
At some stage, I'm going to get to you on the VMG, the velocity made good when you talk about distance and angles, Nathan. But as we see the speed, look at Emirates Team New Zealand doing close to 47 knots as they approach the bottom gate to complete lap number 2, and they are simply flying. You're going to hear that for a lot of time during the next 2.5 months in this America's Cup. Flying 75-foot monohulls, and that is the defender of the America's Cup, and they are putting on a show.
Yeah, one of the big differences you can see from those aft cameras is just the deck layout. You know, we've been talking about it for weeks since they launched the boat, but have a look there. You can see a couple of helmets, but not much. None of those guys are in the wing. You've got Pete and Blair on the left-hand side, Blair at the very front of the boat flying the boat.
Over here.
And then you've got Peter Burling in the middle with steering from the wheel. Grinder's all tucked down out of the breeze, and Glenn Ashby's head sitting on the leeward side as the trimmer, rolling into attack here.
Let's watch these guys run around the front of the boat. That's a difference between this boat as well, just how they position themselves. They run around the front of the mast, where all the rest of the boats, when they switch side, they run behind the boom in the aft section.
2, 1, here we go.
Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli approaching the bottom gate for the second time to complete their second lap of 3 in this opening race of the America's Cup World Series. And their lead is around about a kilometre behind Emirates Team New Zealand. But he may be behind, but I've got to say, Kenny, it's so pretty to watch. They are beautiful boats.
Well, pretty's one thing, fast is another. And again, there's really nothing, any sailboat race for the most part, when there's a lead like this, something has stood out. There's been a big mistake. The only thing that stands out right now is that this boat is simply way faster than the Italian boat is at this moment.
Yeah, but Kenny, they only lost 1 second once again on that downwind. It was 1:16 at the top, it was 1:17 at the bottom. So
maybe it was a shear.
Maybe something happened on that first upwind or that first downwind that we couldn't see. But you know, we've asked Shirley on the water. Shirley, was there something obvious on that first lap that we've missed here in the commentary booth?
I don't think so, Nathan. I mean, to me, it looks great on the right-hand side. The whole time the Kiwis went left and still extended, and even watching them in the warm-up, you know, the hour before the race start as well, they just, whenever they got near a boat, they could pull ahead. They have something extra. If you're one of the challengers right now, what are you thinking?
Got a long way to go. We'll be, you know, it's easy for us right now to start going into the minutia of all the differences of these boats. We got 3.5 months to dissect all the nuance through all the boats. Right now, we, like all the rest of the sailors in the world, are just sitting back and enjoying all these camera views and angles and pictures of boats that we've never seen before.
Surely I have to ask you the question from a pure spectator point of view. What's the show like out on the water?
New Zealand, Auckland, it's delivering, Stephen. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I think everyone in New Zealand owns a boat, and they have come out for this first day. Loads of boats all the way around this tiny, compact, urban stadium course. It is truly breathtaking.
It is a stadium on the water and a stadium off the water as the crowds gather in the America's Cup Village to watch this racing. They know what it's like. They are the defenders, and the defender is flying. But it's only race one of a series that really, in the essence of everything, doesn't matter because the match, the America's Cup, starts March 6, 2021.
Long way to go. You know, it's really easy for the pundits, for us armchair sailors to sit back and draw conclusions, but we have a long way to go. All I can say is remember San Francisco, and I don't mean that as far as the race numbers against each other. I just remember how fast the development was happening in those boats out in San Francisco, how one boat went from 3 or 4 knots slower to 3 or 4 knots faster in the course of a day or two, just because they tripped over something. So we're going to see plenty of advancement as we go.
Cracking shot of the eastern beaches. You can see the beach line of suburbs of Mission Bay and Koimarama in the distance, and the boats. We're right on the literal foreshore of an area called Tamaki Drive. So folks driving back home from work are going to be watching this going, heck, we need to be out on the water. Because this is racing like we have never seen before as Emirates Team New Zealand speeds into the top gate for the last time and heads on their downward leg to the finish of race one in this America's Cup World Series.
So Nathan, everybody talks about the power in these boats, and the power is really split into two. You got all these grinders having at it pretty much the entire race, and from what I know, they're taking care of everything above the waterline. All the sail shapes, the sail trim, these new twin skin mainsails that have all this really comprehensive tweaking that can be done, and then you got batteries powering below. Explain how this battery system and the complexity of that and what that's doing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So everything that's controlled below the water is done with a battery. So there's a battery on board which is charging an accumulator which powers these foil cants that swing the foils up and down. The T-foil sitting on the bottom of those cant arms. There's flaps on the back of them, like a flap or a trim tab on the back of an aeroplane wing. We get a little zoom in here, you'll see Alan on the left-hand side just out of picture. That's what we call the foil wing. Foil drops down as you go in, so this is all powered by batteries. These adjustments, foil comes up on the exit, and on the trailing edge there's a flap. Flap goes down, adds lift, flap comes up, reduces lift.
How critical is the timing when you tack or jibe to get with your forearms up and down?
Timing's everything. You know, basically what they're trying to do when they're doing a maneuver like this is transferring the weight or the lift on one foil to the other foil as quickly and as smoothly as possible. So all the weight of the boat is currently on that leeward foil. That's the thing that's lifting it in the air. The rudder is keeping the boat in balance. You adjust the rudder angle, more lift drives the nose down, less lift drives the bow back up. As you turn through the maneuver, it's all about just transitioning the lift from one foil to another.
Luno Rossa, Prada Pirelli, the challenger of record. Approaching the top gate for the very last time in this race. They've got one more still to come today.
3, 2, 1.
You can hear the voice of Jimmy Spittle as that starboard foil goes down. They can around the gate.
Little delay. You could see that tack was not going to be a good one before it even started.
I'd call that a shocker, Kenny.
Okay.
That's what
completely stopped.
Splashdown.
Yeah, that was a splashdown. It takes a while for them to get going again. That was out of kilter from the second that you could hear it in Jimmy's voice, and everything was a little out of sequence. So that's really the first big mistake we've seen out of either of these two teams, though.
So then now you have to ask questions. Emirates Team New Zealand, who are flying towards the finish line in this opening race of the America's Cup World Series, this win, what does it mean to the other teams?
Nothing. If you're the other team, you're just saying, we knew we had a long way to go. We knew these guys were quick out of the box. There's all kinds of, they were the ones that created the rule, right, Nathan? I mean, they were the major part of creating the rule. They might have The defenders always work a little bit of help, a little bit of edge into the action. Just ask the New York Yacht Club. They had it for 100 and something years.
Emirates Team New Zealand coming to the finish at the end of race 1 of the America's Cup World Series, and they do it in style against Rossa, Prada Pirelli, and the fans just love it. And those are young sailors wanting to be out on that boat. Te Rehotai. A quick explanation of Te Rehotai, you could say, is an extension of the ocean, and it's part of the ocean today, but early days.
Early days. Early days. But there's nothing not to like if you're a Kiwi fan right now, I can tell you that.
Nathan, you've got to say there must be an inward smile of satisfaction from Peter Burling and that crew.
Well, this team and this crew's been waiting to line up against the competition since the event finished in Bermuda. And man, didn't they throw it down. They said, all right, you want to come and take this cup off us? Good luck. We're going to go and beat you by as far as we can.
So, as much as this result means nothing in the greater scheme of things, surely it could be considered a statement.
Oh, there's no question about it. Listen, winning is winning for all these guys. They are all literally the most competitive sailors in the world. So win's a win. But you're not going to see a lot of smiles out of the Kiwis. They realize how hard of work they're going to have to work over these next months to keep this edge, or even have an edge at all when it comes down to it. So I'm not trying to throw cold water on this. I'm just trying to say early days, early days.
We have talked so much about the comparison to Formula One because it's all about aero, all about updates, and we heard Blair Tuke earlier on in our broadcasting about the need to keep adding. And you look at a race like this, and let's put it singularly, gee whiz, what can they add to make it go even faster?
Well, Nathan, back in Bermuda, how many gadgets they still got in the closet that they haven't even broken out yet? That's the big thing. All these teams, they could be using old foils, they could be using old sails, they could be, who knows, right? Nobody knows.
Well, my inside information tells me that some of these teams aren't even on their final set of foils yet. So a lot of these teams have got new foils coming, and they're far from maximum speed right now.
Worth asking, how many foils is each team allowed in total before the Prada Cup and the America's Cup, if they are to make it there, of these challenges?
So the total number of foils is 6 foils. So you see the T-wing out on the far side. So you can basically build 3 for the port side, 3 for the starboard side, so they're allowed to build 6 in total.
And they don't have to be symmetric. There's no reason they could be a matched pair either. For all we know, they have unmatched pairs of foils on the boat to try to get a gauge from one tack or one jibe versus the other.
Rossa, Prada Pirelli, the challenger of records. Finally coming to the finish line in the opening race of this Prada America's Cup World Series, race number 1. Against the defender in Emirates Team New Zealand, and they will finally cross the line and start talking. It's only race 1, but gee, the Kiwis were quick.
American Magic, Emirates Team UK, this is the race committee, just letting you know we intend to start on time at 15:50. Over.
There are Italian fans at the viaduct in the
race committee, Emirates Team UK,
America's Cup Race Village.
Currently got an FCS.
They'll be happy. They've seen racing, and racing that sailors have never really seen before up close, and this is pretty exciting, to say the least.
Well, real sailboat race, boats ripping around the racetrack, tons of people out on the water cheering on the hometown team. Doesn't get much better than this.
A 3-minute and 13-second win to Emirates Team New Zealand over Rossa, Prada Pirelli.